painful legacy.
And we apologize for failing to protect you.
A compensation system in turmoil.
It wasn't about compassion, it was about greed.
Thousands of files mishandled.
We're talking about lawyers that are supposed to be honest and upstanding.
Who will make it right?
Hello, I'm Todd Lamarand. It was supposed to be about money for healing, compensation for abusive treatment at Canada's notorious residential schools. But some major scandals are rocking the federal program known as the independent assessment process and causing greater pain for residential school survivors. APTN's Kathleen Martins investigates abusive process.
This house will be 100 years old in 2 years.
Tradition is important to Renee Taylor.
I'm Renee Taylor, or Negega, member of the Namgis Nation from Alert Bay. I've been practicing law for 24 years.
Like grinding the beans for her morning coffee.
I had several Indians come to me and say that they were not being well represented by the people they had approached.
Or defending the rights of her Aboriginal brothers and sisters.
And I asked them what the problem was, and they said that they weren't able to tell their stories and that they'd heard I was an Indian lawyer who would never stop fighting if I took on a case.
Taylor is talking about compensation claims for former residential school survivors. She has several cases that have been dragging on for years. It's one of the ongoing problems with the federal IAP, or independent assessment process, we've been telling you about since November 2011. About 80,000 former students have applied for compensation across Canada. Officials with the program say they've paid them an average of $150,000 each. The claims were filed between 2007 and 2012. They're for sexual and the worst kind of physical abuse adults say they suffered as children at the government-funded, church-run boarding schools. But it's how they have to get that money that is re-victimizing survivors. They testify in front of strangers in hearing rooms like this one in Winnipeg.
It's a difficult thing to do. You have to maximize compensation. You have to bring people back to difficult points in their life. When you have a woman who's in her 50s and was 4 years at the time she was taken into residential school and very badly abused, it was necessary for me to get a psychologist to support her during that process. It triggered a lot of very bad old memories for her.
Taylor says not all lawyers will help clients like that. She says not all claimants have good lawyers, and not all claimants have good relationships with their lawyers. It's a situation that prompted Alberta social worker Joanne Hansen to speak out about the process and its impact on survivors.
From the client's perspective, it's just like being re-victimized. They were told we could trust the legal system because the government said that.
Hansen this day is outside the Vancouver courthouse. That's where a judge kicked Calgary lawyer David Blott out of the IAP program. Hansen was counseling some of his 5,000 clients while he earned millions of dollars from Ottawa processing their claims. It was information from some of those clients that helped spark an investigation that led to Blott's ouster.
Because there were always loopholes in this agreement. And clearly now we're dealing with those loopholes.
Investigators for the court confirmed what Blott clients told APTN Investigates in two reports we broadcast on the IAP in 2011 and 2012. That Blott and his associates and partners wrongly charged loans, interest, and fees to clients' accounts, violating IAP rules. And Blott had some clients sign documents keeping it secret. Taylor says abusing these already vulnerable clients is wrong.
Many of the people are traumatized by, re-traumatized by having to speak about the worst place in their life, which was the residential school. They remember their parents who were sober at the time that they entered residential school becoming drunks. They remember their parents coming to see them and not being allowed. They remember that they would steal food to survive a day. There was never enough food.
Taylor says some clients barely make it through her questioning to prepare for their hearings.
I've had several clients break down and just start crying, and I say to them that the IAP as it stands is going to be a worse process than the one I'm putting them through, and that they have to be stronger. And some people are able to do that, and some people I find are quite fragile. I don't know who I'm going to be with. I don't know if I'm going to be with a survivor or I'm going to be with somebody that's still too fragile to continue the process.
Those questions led Taylor to wonder about who is really benefiting from this process.
I think the IAP is a system designed by lawyers for lawyers.
Hansen says the program was ripe for abuse.
We're talking about lawyers that are supposed to be honest and upstanding.
Blott has filed an appeal of his dismissal from the IAP. Neither he nor anyone associated with him has been charged with a crime, and none of them agreed to be interviewed by APTN Investigates. However, a criminal complaint has now been filed against Blott with the RCMP. It was sworn by someone from the Blood Reserve in southeastern Alberta, where Hansen worked, and Blott had hundreds of clients. Blott is still on the hook for the $3.5 million cost of the court-ordered investigation into his IAP cases. Here's what the judge said about the investigation. Apart from the prohibited loan activity, the Monitor's final report detailed numerous incidents of other misconduct on the part of Blott and Company, including the apparent falsification or attempted falsification of claims made in the IAP. Brown concluded Blott and his associates violated IAP rules and breached clients' trust. David Blott's conduct has been far from the standard expected of an officer of the court. But she did not order Blott or any of the other parties to repay clients, nor did she order a review of his files. She simply took away the ones that weren't finished and gave them to new lawyers to complete. The judge told clients to sue Blott if they wanted to get some money back.
This is not just a First Nations issue. This is a Canadian issue. This is the legal system that clearly can create loopholes to protect themselves and not the people. And it happens every day.
Blott remains a lawyer in good standing with the Law Society of Alberta. We've learned the Society has been investigating Blott's work for over a year, but it won't discuss it on camera. It is the Society's responsibility in each province to make sure lawyers treat clients properly. It can fine lawyers, suspend them, or ultimately disbar them. In this case, Hansen says the Society didn't do enough to protect clients from Blott.
There was clearly lack of oversight in this. I personally, right from day one, have been trying to get attention on this. I've called, and as I've mentioned before, Indian Affairs, the Secretariat, Dan Ish's office, the Chief Adjudicator's office, and got nothing, no support.
The Residential Schools Adjudication Secretariat and its boss, Dan Ish, seen here leaving the Vancouver courthouse, oversee the IAP program.
The standard of service that some lawyers have provided has been less than they should have provided, and I would say below the standard of acceptable conduct.
Ish has sent memos to the approximately 200 lawyers working with clients. He's reminded them to stick to the IAP guidelines and charge only what those guidelines allow. But not everyone listened.
Most lawyers, you get 15% above and the claim. Most lawyers are suing the government and going to hearings and with contracts that say they get 30 or 35%. And that just seems to me to be opportunistic.
The IAP ended its 5-year mandate last fall in September 2012. Ish has resigned and will leave the program in June 2013, even though claims will continue to be processed for another year or two. Ish says it was never the Secretariat's responsibility to police lawyers, but that changed after it received so many complaints from survivors. He says it has spent thousands of dollars in court fighting lawyers who think they should be paid more.
David Blott is just one of the lawyers being investigated.
There are more across Canada. Organizations are being probed too. These are companies that set up to help survivors fill out their compensation forms. They can charge for their services, but they can't take it off survivors' checks. They have to send a bill instead. But Taylor believes more should have been done to protect survivors, not only from lawyers, but from others who want to exploit them.
From going from living on welfare for years and years and years to having a bit of a windfall has been difficult for some people.
You may be wondering how someone can mess with residential school survivors. Haven't these people been through enough? But where most of us see vulnerable victims, others see potential dollar signs ripe for the picking. Stay tuned. There's a lot of money involved in compensating thousands of former residential school students across Canada. They won an out-of-court settlement from Ottawa to pay for their pain. But the money isn't only for them. It covers the salaries of people in the system who are supposed to help them. This includes fees for lawyers who process their compensation claims. Here's Kathleen Martins with part 2 of Abuse of Process.
It didn't take long for another scandal to strike the residential school compensation program. 2 months ago, IAP officials were back in front of Vancouver Judge Brenda Brown. They told a terrifying tale about a convicted killer. They said parolee Ivan Johnny of northern British Columbia was the chief suspect in an alleged extortion plot. They said Johnny took money from former residential school students. Johnny was on parole for murdering a man more than 20 years ago. But former students in the Williams Lake area say he was working for their IAP lawyer, Stephen Bronstein of Vancouver. More frightening than that, they say Johnny threatened to hurt them unless they handed over part of their compensation funds. Johnny told the IAP he worked on 275 claims. He said the lawyer bought him a vehicle for the job of delivering compensation documents to and from clients' homes. This is the most dangerous situation involving the IAP reported so far. Bronstein declined to speak with us about the allegations. The man on the left, Bronstein's lawyer, Mark Andrews, wouldn't discuss them either. But at the February hearing, Bronstein told the judge he would open his files to court investigators. Social worker Joanne Hansen says it's the least any lawyer can do.
Every lawyer, every individual that was part of this should be responsible for how these people were treated. And it's not just a First Nations issue, it's a Canadian issue. We need to fix this justice system. It sucks.
Brown ordered investigators to dig deep. She said Bronstein must show any communication he exchanged with Johnny, any agreement he made with the killer, and records of any money he paid him. She said he must disclose any loans secured by repayment from settlement funds, with dates, names, amounts outstanding, and any terms. She also protected the names of alleged victims, meaning we can't tell you who they are. She did the same thing with clients who came forward in the Blott case. IAP officials also reassured clients they were safe in this statement posted on their website. The Supreme Court of British Columbia has ordered that Ivan Johnny cannot participate in the independent assessment process in any way. Johnny is no longer on parole and is back in prison. The court also ordered that any claimant who dealt with Mr. Johnny does not have to pay anything to him or to anyone who is trying to collect money for him. What those clients might have experienced through Johnny makes Hansen sick.
I'm frustrated and I'm angry. I'm First Nations. My grandmother went to residential school. She died at 47 years old, I believe, for a broken heart.
Johnny denies he did anything wrong. But here's what parole officials said before sending him back to prison. You were involved in extorting substantial sums of money from successful IAP applicants, counseling former residential school students to file false claims to obtain greater financial compensation, and intimidating/threatening of First Nations members. In some cases, it was substantial sums of money from vulnerable and in some cases cognitively deficient claimants. Complaints about lawyers are nothing new for the IAP. They've been coming in since the 5-year program began in 2007. Officials say some are misunderstandings while others are more serious.
How could this happen? How could a system designed to do good be abused? When something goes wrong, we look for someone or something to blame. Was the system flawed? Were the people in charge asleep at the wheel? Or does it come down to personal responsibility? That people working in the program need to follow the rules and do the right thing?
For now, Brown has put someone in charge of supervising Bronstein's work. The IAP accepted the judge's move, but was disappointed it didn't get a full investigation like the one done on Blot. The judge still has that option, depending on what investigators find in Bronstein's records.
Coming up after the break, we'll speak with the CEO of the Manitoba Law Society to see how they handle a similar case. And reporter Kathleen Martins joins me in studio to tell us what's next for survivors. Welcome back. In 2012, a Winnipeg lawyer lost his right to practice. Howard Tenenhouse was disbarred for overbilling residential school survivors. Tenenhouse took nearly $1 million from 54 clients. In a hearing, it was agreed that Tenenhouse took advantage of these clients. He was the first lawyer in Canada to be disbarred because of mistreating residential school survivors.
He took, unfortunately, matters into his own hands to secure those funds in manners that the Law Society doesn't permit.
That was Robert Tapper. He represented Tenenhouse at the hearing. Tenenhouse was a no-show, and as far as we know, he's still residing outside the country. Joining me now is the CEO of the Manitoba Law Society, Alan Feinblit. Unlike its Alberta counterpart, his organization moved quickly and decisively when a Manitoba lawyer was found to have been overcharging IAP clients. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Feinblit, your organization disbarred Howard Tenenhouse for overcharging about 50 residential school survivors, total of $1 million. Why did you do that?
You know, we were concerned right from the get-go because the people we were aware of that were in the process were highly vulnerable. Many of them had suffered terrible abuse. Many of them were very traumatized by this. A lot of them were elderly. A lot of them didn't speak English as their first language. And that vulnerability had our radar up right from the get-go. So when we became aware of the concerns regarding Mr. Tenenhouse, we began to investigate, and it became clear that there was a pattern, and at first we knew about a few of the cases. The more we investigated, the more we found, and some of the stories were just terrible, of people who had counted on him and had relied on him. Many of them didn't know that he had taken more than he was entitled to, and ultimately there was a good outcome. Nobody lost any money. There was about $1 million that was taken, and everyone was paid every penny. The Law Society has a practice that when a lawyer takes money that he or she isn't entitled to, the Law Society will pay it back, and then we'll go after the lawyer to collect, and that's what we did in this case.
In the Manitoba Law Society is the only one in Canada to have done this, a very serious move. What message do you think that sent to maybe other law societies in Canada?
Well, you know, one of the things that gets lost sometimes, because we tend to focus on the bad stories, is that there were literally thousands and thousands of these matters and hundreds of lawyers involved. And for the most part, they served their clients really well. And we have had a number of inquiries after this case got a fair bit of exposure. We had a number of inquiries about other lawyers in Manitoba. And we were able to, on investigation, determine that actually those lawyers had charged appropriately, had done a good job for their clients. That's not to say we won't uncover more. The process is still ongoing. In terms of other law societies, it's also important to remember that we have a large portion of the residential school survivors living in Manitoba.
Right.
So in some other provinces, they won't see nearly the volume or number of cases. There are, however, other cases in Canada I know that are under investigation, and hopefully they'll have as good an outcome as we did.
We've got about 45 seconds left, so I'm going to ask you a last question. You said you have anticipated problems with the program. Why did you say that?
Well, we knew that there was a bad combination, lots of money on the table and vulnerable people, and that creates temptation. We tried to get out early and do some education with support workers for the residential school survivors. We developed a relationship with the Chief Commissioner's office. We did education with the legal profession as what was expected, but we anticipated that given that dangerous mix of lots of money and vulnerable people, there might be some abuse, and we were alert for it.
Okay, well, thank you for doing this and telling us about this.
You're welcome.
APTN investigates as coverage of the IAP process will continue over the next several years. Kathleen Martins has been following this complicated story for more than 2 years. Her efforts led to a Canadian Association of Journalists Award nomination last year, and next week she's off to Toronto to accept an Amnesty International Human Rights Journalism Award for her work on this story. Kathleen joins me now. Welcome, Kathleen.
Hello, Todd.
Now, can you tell us what's going to happen next for the IAP survivors?
Absolutely. Dan Ish, the head of the Secretariat of the IAP, he's asked a judge for a decision on form-filling companies. Survivors are not supposed to pay more than 15% of their payout towards obtaining their compensation. But we know of some form-filling companies that are charging 10%. That only leaves 5% for legal fees if that falls within the 15%. I know it's complicated, but the Secretariat's asked a judge to make that decision, so we should know about that in, who knows, next few months maybe.
Okay, and what's the next step in the David Blott and Stephen Bronstein investigations?
Okay, well, David Blott, that's the first one where the judge has already acted, but now it's in the hands of the Law Society of Alberta. They've been investigating his IAP activities for over a year. They've got 2 investigators working on it. They re-interviewed a lot of the people we've already talked to for our stories. So we're waiting for that report to be made public or for them to decide if they're going to discipline David Blott as a lawyer in terms of fining him, suspending him, or maybe disbarring him. As for Mr. Bronstein, there's a review right now, but depending on what those investigators for the court find out, his could turn into a big investigation like there was for Mr. Blott. As well, Ivan Johnny, who's the parolee who was allegedly working for Bronstein, he's back behind bars. RCMP I spoke to this week said they're still investigating whether there's enough evidence to lay criminal charges against him for the extortion.
Okay, great. Thanks for that update, Kathleen.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's all the time we have. Next week is our season finale. Melissa Ridgen will have the story of 3 Saskatchewan First Nations. They're hooked on free legal drugs and want to kick the habit. You won't believe what they're up against. I'm Todd Lamoran. I'll see you then.